Good afternoon, Suidlanders. How are you? We trust that you are well. I've been a bit absent for some days. I've been dealing with a couple of three very demanding matters, one of which was extremely demanding. In fact, Mr. Miller and I met on that subject not last Friday. So today being the 24th, Friday the 24th of March, -7, it would have been Friday the 17th. Last week Friday, and we sat for 3 hours in the sun, well, in the shade of a tree, but in the sunshine a bit. And afterwards, I was more tired than I have ever been, ever. I felt like I was 80 years old. And the matter is not a negative matter, but it was very, very serious and trying, if you like. In fact, at one point during the conversation, I said to Mr. Miller, I said, look, my forearms are trembling, not my hands or knees or my forearms. Have you ever had that? I've never had that, but it was quite an intense conversation. And that goes to explain why it is that I've been absent. I've really had, my plate has been overfull, and I've had to give all of my attention to a couple of very serious subjects. I'm going to press pause and see if I can straighten out this camera a little bit. There we go. It's not perfect, but it's better than it was. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have a bit of catching up to do, and I'm going to try to do it really quickly. Starting with Saturday of 13 days ago. 2 weeks ago, what was everybody's preoccupation? It was the looming EFF national shutdown. And we're going to get onto that a little bit more in due course, because there's really a lot to say. Something very interesting that came out on Saturday, the 12th of March, was that the Eskom failures, the beerdkrag, the whatever you want to call it, the blackouts, cost the paper industry of South Africa 700 million rand just in 2022. I think you can see for yourself the implications that it has when you extrapolate that across the entire economy, into every sector and every industry. How much money are we being cost by the African National Congress and those ministers of cabinet that are running the cabals, that are perpetrating the sabotage and so on in Eskom? Our country is well and truly being destroyed by those African National Congress cabinet ministers, and of course by the President of the Republic, who is aiding and abetting them. It is indisputable that he has been aware, that he has been made aware of these very senior people participating in these actions, and he has done nothing about it. So that is what Cyril Ramaphosa, everybody's favorite in the northern suburbs of Johannesburg, just love him, and that smile, yeah, but one day is one day. Also, on Saturday the 12th, it came out, investors flooding out of South Africa. 100 billion rand has been removed by foreign investors from the South African economy in 2.5 months. 100 billion rand in 2.5 months. I started to change my tune about the last Monday's shutdown when it became apparent that Julius Malema was speaking as if he knew something that we didn't. Again, we're going to get onto that. Then, of course, we saw over the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th of March, the bank failures in the United States of America, beginning with, I forget the bank's name. Then, of course, we had the second one was, the big one was Silicon Valley Bank, then First Republic Bank, and then, of course, this week we witnessed the failing, although not failure, of Credit Suisse in Switzerland. We know by now, of course, that the Swiss government kind of bailed them out, and then another Swiss bank, United Bank of Switzerland, or Union Bank of Switzerland, UBS, bought them, but they were only willing to buy out Credit Suisse, if the Swiss government gave, at one stage it was, and I think it's increased, 6 billion euros in guarantees. Very, very dicey, and this is highly symptomatic of the general malaise of banking and finance in the West. Something very big is happening. It's playing out before our eyes. It's absolutely terrifying. It is likely to have a contagion effect upon South Africa to some extent. We don't know what extent yet. And it's happening very suddenly. I expressed a lot of indignation about Julius Malema. This is the middle of the week of last week, about Julius Malema and the EFF making threats concerning shutdown. Everything must be shut down. People shouldn't open their businesses and so on. But the thing that disgusted me, really disgusted me, was the absolute capitulation of white South Africans. They said boo, and we burst into tears as a collective. And of course, that has led to them taking occupation of a certain upper hand position that they will never relinquish and which nobody can ever retrieve. So we say thank you to the what is the right word? Well, anyway, the cowards of the Vryheidsfront and of the intelligence agencies that gave, can you believe, that gave advice that people shouldn't open their businesses, they shouldn't go to work. They conspicuously and in public capitulated. We've seen over the past roughly 3 weeks or so, particularly, but not only, it began before, but it was initially slow, a number of countries beginning to ditch the United States dollar as the medium of exchange in transactions, import and export, between those countries and Russia. I won't go into all of the details now, but the US dollar is not only the petrodollar. It is not only the currency of final resort. In other words, the currency that backs the financial system of the world. It is also the currency of exchange. It's an intermediary. In other words, if I buy something from China, I don't work out what is the exchange rate, or if I sell something to somebody overseas, I don't make the price. Don't insist to them, well, you must pay me this many, whatever, yuan, in relation to the rand. What I actually do is measure the rand against the dollar, that currency against the dollar, and then determine what must that currency pay me to make the correct amount, the correct number of rand, or the correct amount of rand. So it is a very big thing that it is not being used for trade. Huge, huge, huge. The US banking system has lost 47 billion rand, or had by the middle of last week. We saw the Dutch farmers excuse me, the BBB party do very, very well. Time will tell though whether they are legitimate, because in spite of everybody's wild enthusiasm about the BBB, not much reading has been done, and therefore people are apparently oblivious to the fact that the BBB party is very pro many 2030 agenda goals. They're not Suidlanders type of conservative. Right. Meta, that is to say Facebook, is laying off another 10,000 more workers, which is a big thing in the context of, if you've been following it, the number of workers in total that have been laid off by Amazon and Meta and Google and Microsoft and a number of other very, very big companies in the USA. It was revealed in The Guardian towards the end of last week that chickens kept in gardens will have to be registered under planned new rules. They are coming for our food. And lo and behold, on the very same day, we got a report that Ian Williamson, the CEO of South Africa's largest life insurer, Old Mutual Limited, is warning of food shortages in South Africa. I don't need to tell you about that. Suidlanders has been discussing that with you, ladies and gentlemen, for almost 3 years now, since, would it have been March of 2020, I believe? Consumers owe South African municipalities over 300 billion rand. More banking collapses on the way, we are warned. Right, we edge closer and closer to the big day, Monday, of the shutdown, Julius Malema's shutdown. South African shares lost 1 trillion rand in 7 days. 1 trillion rand in 7 days, as at the 16th of March. So very, very, very bad things are happening in the South African economy, in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, in terms of foreign direct investment, in terms of profit and loss in the South African economy, in South African industry, in South African commerce. I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, that we haven't yet felt the real effects of this, and that it is only in time to come that we're going to feel the full pain of the events of the past 3 months. 100 billion rand pulled out in foreign direct investment, trillion rand loss in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. The pain is yet to come. Argentina's inflation topped 100% for the first time since 1991. We're going to be hearing more about that, believe you me. The Reserve Bank revealed to us a week ago, South Africa has reached a new low and it could get worse. They spoke about a decline in living standards, the growth outlook being worse than it has been for a long time. Domestically, we are experiencing the lowest growth episode in modern South African history, marked most recently by the widespread failure of basic infrastructure especially electricity. This is the South African Reserve Bank making these admissions, ladies and gentlemen. We have rough times ahead of us. For those of you who are interested in the financial thing, China is dumping US debt, US bonds, sovereign bonds, treasuries as they call them. Sometimes you will hear them referred to as coupons, as notes, as bills. They're all the same thing. It's bonds issued to raise money for the United States government. So it is effectively US debt. It is the debt of the United States of America. We're going to make a video on that. It's actually quite an interesting thing. Right. Lots of noise in the run-up to the big shutdown. Daai brandewyndrinkers, julle wat so almal wil moer. Suid-Afrika kort julle. Time to shine, boys. Julius Malema whipped his people into a frenzy over the weekend. And lo and behold, on Sunday night, it kicked off. We received lots of videos from Durban of small groups of EFF people marching through the streets. And people began to think, oh, here we go, it's going to be big. But, of course, it flattered to deceive. And I was one of those people who said, this is a waste of my time. I'm going to go and do something else. So I drove to Cape Town, really. I had something very important that I could do there. We also saw, over that period, the weekend, last weekend, huge riots of millions of people in France, all across France, in big cities. It was very much underreported by the mainstream media. Those mainstream media outlets that did discuss it spoke about thousands of protesters. By no means was it thousands, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands. It was certainly millions. And it was all about pension reforms. The government pushed through a law which was meant to go through Parliament, but Emmanuel Macron's government sneakily abused an emergency law to push through legislation increasing the retirement age from 62 to 64. People went berserk, and they are still going berserk. Righty. I beg your pardon. There we go. And as we edged closer to that dramatic moment, we saw it was just the funniest thing. South Africa offers to host Ukraine-Russian parliamentary peace talks, as reported by News 24. So this is the foreign minister saying, the Minister of International Affairs and Love or something, that we, South Africa, are willing to host the peace talks between Russia and Ukraine because that's the role that we play in the world. And if it was up to us, the Israel-Palestine conflict would be long over. Ukraine conflict, East Timor, you name it. Nelson Mandela. Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Peaceful transition. But it's almost incomprehensible how little self-awareness you have to say something like that just as your country is about to go into national shutdown and people are talking about civil war and anarchy and businesses being looted and watch your step. If you open your business, we're going to come and donor you. I don't think that any foreign entity took her seriously for 1 minute. And then, of course, the issuance of an ICC warrant, International Criminal Court in Den Haag, warrant for the arrest of the President of Russia, which undermined the ICC's credibility forever, and it shall never be regained. On the Sunday evening, we saw rattles going into the townships. And I made a note for the foreigners on my WhatsApp groups, foreign friends, 30 years after the Boere army left the townships, the now ANC army is returning in the self-same, individually, self-same individual vehicles, because the Economic Freedom Fighters Marxist Parliamentary Party has declared that tomorrow be a shutdown and the first day of the revolution. I made an Afrikaans note. O donder die arme land, hulle weet nie meer wat se kant toe nie. Na dae se stilte oor die EFF se openbare dreigemente van geweld, ontplooi hulle nou ewe skielik panservoertuie na die lokasies toe, 30 jare sedert daai selfde panservoertuie die lokasies verlaat het. Ek wens amper die massas val daai pansers aan en die weermag gee pad soos 'n sleghond met hulle sterk tussen hulle bene. For me, that was one of the greatest ironies of my life. So, the shutdown began, and people were saying, oh, it's been declared illegal. But people were not reading the document. You know, there was that document, the High Court judgment. It was being sent around. Each person got it 300 times. I got it 6,800 times. But nobody read it. They would say, declared illegal. Declared illegal. Fist bump. And the document read in black and white that the application by the applicant, the application by the Democratic Alliance to have the shutdown declared illegal is dismissed. The application was dismissed. It was never, not for 1 minute, declared illegal. All that was of note there was that the High Court said that the EFF in conducting or in executing the national shutdown shouldn't loot, rob, rape, pillage, it's the application is dismissed. But note, the High Court wishes not to see crime, wishes not to see violence, wishes not to see nastiness, wishes not to see ugliness, wishes not to see... That's it. So, by the next morning it had begun. And by 9:06, I sent out a message to all of the people on my groups, all of the Suidlanders leaders saying, right, that's it. I'm not going to waste my time on this anymore. Now they are making propaganda videos, that's to say the EFF is making propaganda videos, about nothing. The police walking away. You may have seen that one video where the EFF is gathered at some gates and the police kind of timidly, half-heartedly attempt to take them on and then walk away. But I was solidly wrong. So I said, I've got more important things to do than listen to guerrilla struggle songs while people stand at a gate, for pity's sake, man. For at least, this is me getting it wrong, for at least the 30th time this year, I'll repeat the answer I gave to the first person who asked me about 20th of March, with a note of anxiety in their voice. You can't shut down a country with 12% support. Anyway, this is the 4th time in 10 years that he is going to try to do it. Actually, I think it's the third or 4th. And the first 3 were embarrassing failures. See you later. In brackets, call me if they get their act together. And I literally did drive down to Cape Town. It was a joke. These things were so poorly attended, so poorly supported. But that's where we, especially I, was tricked. Julius Malema never said that 800 billion people would be on the streets. What he said was, we will shut down the country. And with nobody, literally, we counted it, the videos. Uppington, I think, was 12 people or 9 people accompanied by 14 policemen. Somewhere else it was 12. And yet, the country shut down. They said boo, and we burst into tears. There was little substance, little ability, little capacity, little support, and yet they got it completely right. We've seen a lot of doom and gloom come out from all sorts of quarters around the world about South Africa. I must tell you that there are too many reports for me to go into here and keep this video at a reasonable length. Many of the world's top observers, top commentators, top forecasters are speaking just the most severe doom and gloom about South Africa, not least Martin Armstrong of Armstrong Economics, who has that computer, what's called Socrates, that predicts world events. Yeah, guys, the war in China continues. France is still being rocked by nationwide protests, absolutely rocked. Rihanna Pretorius, who was kidnapped outside of her place of work last week, has been found unharmed. Yes, unharmed. That's what happens. The story is yet to come out. But, yeah. The whole of the ANC in Parliament voted against, in spite of the factions that we've heard so much about. The entire ANC in Parliament voted against a motion to set up an inquiry into Eskom's corruption. They must, therefore, all, faction-wise, be involved. All of the African National Congress factions have got their fingers in that pie, because not one voted for an investigation. Dankie al julle ja-stemmers, hoor. And that's about it, guys. I don't know if I've missed anything, but I believe that that's a pretty fair covering of what's going on, has been going on for the past couple of weeks. And I look forward to seeing you next Friday. Thank you very much for watching this video. We hope that you enjoy it, that we hope that you appreciate getting honest, accurate, truthful, reliable, dependable information in these very, very dim times in which the mainstream media is contributing nothing to enlightening us about what is really going on in the world. Thank you for watching this video. Goodbye, and God bless all of you, especially for the tough times that lie immediately ahead of us. Bye-bye.